Well, hello. It's our second week in Romans, and I hope your studies are going along well for you. The purpose of this short video really has to do with class mechanics and just to be sure everybody's moving along well. So I'm going to touch on a few rather practical aspects of our study. The first, I just want to remind you there is something called a course check-in. Please do this, and it's just 5 questions. It's very simple, but it is designed by the school to be sure you get started right. I'm asking you to please remember to do this. And I've noticed also that some of you are still in progress after a few days. I don't know what that means entirely, but perhaps it's that you've not closed out, you've not saved it, you've not submitted it, and so please do that. Small grade for that, but you do get graded, and it is a part of your overall course participation, which the bigger part of that is 20% of your grade. Course check-in is a small part, but please do it. The other part of class participation is the discussion board. So let's talk about that for just a moment. There are 3 parts to the discussion board. And this will be done 4 times during the course, the first week, which is last week, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th. Now, there's 3 parts to the discussion board. If you've already done this before, you know what I'm talking about. The first is the initial thread. And for the initial thread, I need for you to use sources. I need you to footnote that or at least cite it in some way. Let me know where you got your ideas. One of those sources can be your textbook by Douglas Moo. The other can be anything from an online resource to a commentary or Bible dictionary that you have in your possession. But I do need you to give citations, references for your work in the initial thread. You don't need to do that in response threads. There'll be 2 of those. The total of all of that in any given week is 100 points. And so discussion board. I need you to be doing that. And if you have any questions, I think if you've been around me much, you'll know that I will respond to your questions. If you will email me, I'll try to get back with you as quickly as possible. The third thing that I want to talk to you about is the analytical and exegetical workbook, and particularly what we're doing there insofar as the second part of that beginning, analytical and exegetical. We will analyze the text, and then we like to do something called biblical exegesis. Now, I have put in your supplemental readings and also in the essential materials steps in doing exegesis. I'd like to go over that with you very quickly, and you can draw that up, you can look at it. But I have here 6 steps in doing biblical exegesis. This does not mean that you have to go through every one of them exhaustively. As a matter of fact, you're going to need to narrow it down a little bit. But I'd like to just walk through this with you, just to be sure that we're on the same page. And this will be done for us in this course in the workbook. So here are the 6 steps, and you can, again, draw these up and look at them. The first 2 have to do with context. Establish the context of the passage in the biblical book as a whole. Establish the context in the book. Now, what I'm asking you to do each week, and I know this is a lot, but I'm asking you every week to read the entire book of Romans. Now, I'm not asking you to take it apart. I'm asking you to quickly read it. Use a different translation each week, but just read through it. And you may want to skim. You may want to look at paragraph headings, things of that sort, but just get the overall grasp, context of the book of Romans. You need to do that lest you pull passages out of context. The book of Romans is not like the book of Proverbs, where it seems like there's just a string of unrelated verses and passages. There is a consistent, cohesive argument throughout the book of Romans, and so that's number 1. Number 2, establish the historical setting or context of the passage. Now, this is where your commentaries, your additional introduction to New Testament survey, those type of things can help in setting the context. This is important. We talked about it last week just a little bit in the video about ways of reading the book of Romans. Number 3, is the core of what I will be looking for from you in the workbook, which is analyze the content of the text. How do we do that? Word studies. I'm asking you to define words. Now, you can do that. I do it with Young's Analytical Concordance, which I've used for years. It's a big thing, but you can actually look up the word in the Greek. I would prefer and ask that you try to get into the Greek if you can. Now, you must have a good text from which to work, but analyze the content of the text. That includes both the words and the phrases. Number 4, in doing exegesis, apply a variety of critical methods to analyze the text in both its content and its context. What does the phrase, what does the idea mean? What is Paul, or the author for that matter, trying to say? Number 5, analyze the text theologically. Again, we do this in the workbook. We start off with key words, then phrases, and then I'm asking you to analyze it theologically. What does this say theologically? How does it work out in terms of biblical or systematic theology? Look for theological themes. And how does that fit in with the overall picture theologically? Number 6, add your own analysis and or application. And again, we try to do this in the workbook. One question has come into me that are we looking for textbook answers in the workbook? And the answer is no, not really. Now, you can use your text, but what I'm looking for in the workbook is for you to grapple with the text. I want you to think. I want you to pray. I want you to tell me what you think the Bible says in the particular passages that we look at, the phrases, so forth. Let me just give you one quick example from our passage from this week, and it's Romans 3, verse 20. It says this, "Therefore, by the deeds of the law, no flesh will be justified in his sight, for by the law is the knowledge of sin." Now, how do we do exegesis on this verse? Therefore, by the deeds of the law, no flesh will be justified in his sight, for by the law is the knowledge of sin. Again, I won't try to take this apart totally, but if you've read the commentary or tried to do any work at all yet, you know that the deeds of the law, or that phrase, the works of the law, is much discussed. What do we mean? Are we talking about works righteousness, or are we talking about the law in its totality and what it means to us? Herein is the difference between what would be the Reformation view and the new perspectives on Paul. Luther would say that the deeds of the law are the righteous acts done in obedience to the law. The new perspectives would say rather it's not really the deeds, the emphasis is not deeds, but the emphasis is law. Therefore, by the law, no flesh will be justified. And the law being the covenant relationship with Israel. The word justified shows up. Key words in this passage. What does it mean to be justified? According to the Reformation view, justified means to be set in right relationship with God. It's a vertical thing. According to the new perspectives, justified is more lateral. That means that we are brought into unity together in the gospel. The Gentile and Jew walk together. Again, different interpretations on this passage. You must decide what you believe that verse is saying, and then in his sight, which means it is vertical. It is toward God. For it says, for by the law